Coming up ahead in this episode of Xtalks Spotlight.
The number of clinical trials targeting IPF and other rare respiratory indications has significantly increased. Trial designs have become more refined, we have better endpoints, more refined eligibility criteria, but there still very much remains a regulator expectation around the familiarity of trial designs. The growing knowledge and better understanding of the underlying disease has really helped drive that progress.
Hello, and welcome to Xtalks Spotlight, illuminating insights from subject matter experts and industry thought leaders. I'm Sonia Hunt. In this episode, we're exploring key considerations for overcoming challenges in IPF and other rare respiratory disease clinical trials.
Although treatment options have been limited for idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis and other rare respiratory disease patients, changes to the landscape, technological advancements, and strategic trial design are driving a renewed focus on drug development. The complexity of diagnosing these diseases, understanding the root causes, and translating preclinical findings to clinical success still presents challenges for drug developers today. In this Xtalks Spotlight, I spoke with Dr. Frances Jones, Executive Director of Project Management in the PPD clinical research business of Thermo Fisher Scientific, about these challenges and the major efforts reshaping drug development strategies in these indications. In our discussion, Dr. Jones shared how scientific understanding, patient engagement, and clinical trial practices have evolved in recent years, and what clinical study advancements we can look forward to in the years ahead. Thank you for taking the time for this Spotlight interview, Frances.
Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to discussions today.
To start us off, how would you say that the landscape in idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis and rare respiratory disease has evolved over the last 10 years?
I think in the last 10 years, there has been significant progress made, but there's still very much a need for better medications across many of our rare disease respiratory indications. I think cystic fibrosis is kind of one of our prime examples where 20 years ago, we were still very much treating the symptoms of the disease. We were managing patients, but then along came Vertex, and they've been developing drugs now since about 2012. I think they had their first approval up until most recently, where Trikafta was approved in 2020, where we're actually now treating the underlying cause of the disease. And for patients, the huge benefit is we've seen life expectancy go from maybe 30 to 40 years to babies born today with cystic fibrosis who have a life expectancy in excess of 60 years. I think similarly in PAH, we had sotatercept approved last year and is widely regarded as the first disease-modifying therapy for this indication. It remains to be seen if sotatercept sustainably reverses or halts remodeling beyond those 2 years, but shows huge promise and caused a great deal of excitement within the respiratory community. I think IPF is certainly one of the challenging indications there, and despite progress, it remains a progressive disease for many patients. The approved therapies only slow that decline, they don't stop it. We did see nerandomilast approved just last month, which is the first drug in over 10 years for this indication, giving new hope for patients. And now we've also seen United Therapeutics come through with positive phase 3 data from their pivotal trial in IPF. Certainly the heterogeneity in these patients means that they can vary very widely in the course of their disease, with some of them declining quite slowly, but others much more rapidly. And really being able to identify which patients will benefit most and when to start those therapies is still a challenge within management of IPF. But I think overall, there's been positive progress in rare respiratory, but there's still a huge opportunity for new drugs to be developed.
Now, could you share a little about the challenges we're facing in the treatments of patients with IPF?
The treatment landscape has shifted significantly in the last 10 years in IPF from an era of no treatment options for patients to having access to modest antifibrotic therapies to now where we are with an expanding pipeline of targeted agents. The challenge remains to move, though, from slowing progression to halting or even reversing that fibrosis. The role of the multidisciplinary medical teams, the pulmonologists, the radiologists, and the pathologists remains absolutely key for the accurate and early diagnosis of these patients so that we can treat them prior to significant disease progression. The disease burden is a key consideration for all of our respiratory patients, but it's particularly challenging in IPF. Often these patients are having to travel long distances to specialist centres for treatment, which in itself can limit access to treatment and trial participation. So we are looking at ways of remotely monitoring these patients and providing at-home support. But for IPF, the life expectancy remains around 3 to 5 years from diagnosis, so still a huge unmet need.
And how have clinical trials for rare respiratory diseases changed in recent years?
I think that over the last decade, the number of clinical trials targeting IPF and other rare respiratory indications has significantly increased. Trial designs have become more refined, we have better endpoints, more refined eligibility criteria, but there still very much remains a regulator expectation around the familiarity of trial designs. Precision medicine, stratification of patients with better phenotyping, looking at imaging, molecular biomarkers to personalized therapies and trial assignment has now become much more standard. The growing knowledge and better understanding of the underlying disease has really helped drive that progress. And I think equally that focus on the feel, function, and survive paradigm is key to support recruitment. So often we've looked at spirometry as measuring what is measurable and maybe not so much looked at what is meaningful to the patients. Ultimately, we have to keep the patients in mind when we are designing these trials to ensure that we collect the data we need, manage that trial participation burden, and develop drugs that truly make a difference to these patients' lives.
And in your opinion, Francis, have clinical trials become more patient-centric? And if so, in what way?
I think that's a really important question. And overall, I would say that yes, they have, but there's still very much a room for improvement. Without the patients, there are no clinical trials. One of the challenges is the recent reports have shown in the last 10 years, trials have become more complex. We have more endpoints, more assessments. We have more sites and patients required to be able to enroll the trials. And we're focusing very much on subsets of patients. There's a number of factors driving that include more complex therapies, cell and gene therapies, strict regulations, and advanced clinical trial designs. But we are still collecting a lot of nice-to-have data, and that's an area where there's room for improvement. But on a positive note, we have embraced more patient-centric trial participation approaches. We employ home healthcare more often on trials, where nurses, phlebotomists, even physicians can go to a patient's home to carry out assessments, to collect data, without the patients having to travel into a clinic. Equally, we have remote data collection technologies that allow us to carry out spirometry, cough monitoring, Holter collection within the patient's home. And this is certainly an area of technology that's evolving rapidly, even with AI incorporation, where we can do remote overreads in real time, which enable us to really manage these patients in a home setting. And equally, as I mentioned before, that there's a focus on measuring what's meaningful to the patients. How does a treatment really impact on their quality of life?
Now, looking ahead, what are some clinical study advancements that we can anticipate in the treatment of IPF and other rare diseases?
Precision medicine is an area of study that holds huge promise for patients, particularly IPF and other rare respiratory diseases. We've seen in cystic fibrosis drugs that can manage patients with particular mutations and help manage their disease, particularly understanding which patients aren't going to benefit from a drug. Tailored therapies can not only improve those treatment outcomes, but may be more cost effective through the avoidance of ineffective treatment regimens. I think precision medicine could have a major role in the identification of individuals with disease susceptibility and pave that way for early diagnosis. Importantly, precision medicine can discriminate individuals at risk of progressive disease even before that progression occurs, providing that window for early intervention or potentially the use of alternative treatment regimens that are more appropriate for that patient.
And lastly, what final thoughts would you like to leave with our viewers?
as we've discussed, the landscapes have evolved significantly over the last 10 years and continues to evolve, with some amazing doctors and scientists working on new and revolutionary therapies. I think there's definitely hope for patients on the horizon. And by very much working together, we hope to find that cure that they so desperately need.
Well, thank you very much, Francis, for speaking with us today. We really appreciate your time and insights.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure to have the opportunity to come here today to talk about IPF and the rare respiratory disease landscape. Thank you.
We look forward to learning more about advances in clinical development for rare respiratory diseases. Thank you all for joining us for this Xtalks Spotlight feature. We hope you enjoyed the discussion.